Because one of the things that interests me is that actually if you look at the mobile space for investing, there are very few consumer mobile successes. I mean, you know, Martine, you invested callback back in the 90s, but you haven't done any mobile actual play since then. You haven't created a mobile-related play since then. So I would love to get your thoughts on that. All of you are passionate about the internet. All of you are looking for big opportunities. Java was a great success, but we don't see many out there. Why is that?
Well, I think that what we're doing at FON is, if it's not mobile, it's nomadic. Let's say we built the largest Wi-Fi network in the world in a year, and we're adding like 20,000 hotspots a month, which is the size of T-Mobile Wi-Fi. But T-Mobile has Wi-Fi and it has mobile, right? And we only have Wi-Fi. Why? Because there's an international scam that's called GSM licenses, and if you have them, you're part of it, and if you don't have them, you're left out, and that's why there hasn't been so much, you know, so many new things going on. But now there's Wi-Fi 802.11n, there's WiMAX, there's parts of the spectrum that haven't begun out. So in terms of telecom, I think finally the game is opening up. And in terms of content, I would disagree with you, Danny, because I think there's been a lot of good stuff that's been created. And certainly Jamba is an example of an incredible new category that who would have guessed that people would have, you know, paid fortunes for that silly frog, you know.
Yeah, no, I think it's the main reason is the standard. There is no standard with the phones. I mean, if you have to port a web application to a phone, you need to translate it into how many systems you have Symbian, and you have BlackBerry, you have, you know, it's just too many. On the web, you just do one. I think that's the main reason. It's terrible when you want to have a service there, except ringtones, right?
Yeah, I think the screen is just too small. It's just not fun to do much on those small screens, and even them getting a little bit bigger. It's just so difficult to do serious, entertaining stuff on it. And then also, as Martin said, you're walking a walled garden. You always need the operator to work with you if you want to do something which is integrated into the network and really interesting. Even presence, you have to work with the operator. And with a fixed line internet, it's so much easier. You just plug in your server, you program your site, you put it up, and then the world can see it. So we have not seen until today something besides ringtones and maybe video as the next generation of pictures, which has really caught attention in that space. GPS is probably bringing, I just saw yesterday the Nokia phone, the N95 with GPS built in, and then Nokia is providing this great location software, these great maps, etc. That is going to be a serious service which is going to be used. But I think in the end, we all like to use the internet either very efficient, and then the screen again is too small, or we would like to be entertained. And then again, the screen is too small, the capacity is not big enough. Plus, you have to work with big guys.
I mean, what's also interesting is that the N95 was supposed to ship with Wi-Fi, and most operators have shut down the Wi-Fi capability. So surprisingly, there are 110,000 phones in the UK, contraband, that have Wi-Fi functionality, but there are millions that are out there that should have shipped with that and don't. So it's going to be an interesting sort of challenge and battle that goes on between the openness of Wi-Fi and the closed system of GSM.
And I also think there is still too much hope for location-based services. I mean, who of us wants to walk down High Street and get a message every second? You know, come into McDonald's, you get a burger free, and come into Marks and Spencer's and you get sandwich free, and you know, you just don't want it.
But that's a big trend on mobile, which is happening, which is microblogging. So, how many of you know Twitter? Well, okay, so you know Twitter. So I think not everybody. So no, it's a very big trend, very interesting that you were mentioning, okay, get close to this shop and you get an advertising message. But in this case, it's us telling the world what we're doing. Like, okay, I'm going to lunch and back from lunch. Very interesting. I mean, you know, it's like useless, pointless. But so like on my Twitter, I have like more than 500 followers. And what I send them as a message is, why do you read this? Because it's like, so this is a very weird trend, which is interesting, and I think we see the web and the web merging through those instantaneous communications. Like email is getting a lot broken, thanks to Gmail it's better, but because we all have too many. So here it's like, grab me now or never, right? So it's a very interesting trend, which I think are making the both converging.
Okay, if I could ask the three of you to join the stage, and while the three of them join, anyone who wants to ask a question, it'd be great if you could either stand up or go to the microphone stand. There's a question right here.
So, especially with Danny here on stage, what is the role of the VC? How important has it been for you to pick the right one or wrong one, and how much time should serial entrepreneurs spend on that?
Now we're moderating.
I'll volunteer this. I think probably maybe I'm the one who's raised the most money from the most diverse group of VCs. APAC's happened since like the early 90s. And Dan is one of a kind. I'd like to say that. He's very good. But I'll explain. No. It's the real one. It's the real. You know, I don't bullshit. The GSM operators are a scam, and he's the. but I'll say why. And it's not just that. There's a group of VCs like that. Very few, but there are. There's some who say, okay. Sort of the panspermia theory of life, you know, you throw your sperm everywhere, and somewhere life may spring, you know. And I've had previous VCs who endorsed the panspermia theory of life. I say this because I don't know if Marc is here, but he reminded me of that theory yesterday. I thought it was very interesting, not applying to VCs though. But there's the nurturing VCs. The VCs who are there and are helping you, are bringing you contacts, are giving you ideas, nurturing. So my advice to anyone who's starting a business is really interview your VC, like the people, like Eric says in interviews, Google interviews people with the LAX theory, 6 hours at an airport stuck with them. Okay, think you're 6 hours at an airport stuck with your VC. Would you survive? Would you hate him? I think that's applicable.
I'm very good at collecting coffee, getting eugenic juice. That's the value add. You guys, if you
I think the most important point, and that is why VCs still are interesting and matter to serial entrepreneurs, because I mean, let's face it, we all have been there, we've done it, we know what the challenges are, we could do it alone, we don't need a helping hand, which is certainly different when you do it the first time. Why serial entrepreneurs still need very good VCs like you, Danny, and there are very few in Europe, and there are actually also very few in the US, if you're honest. You just must make sure that he really understands the business and that he really is a sparing partner. That is the original idea of the VC, because all the VC's money is green, okay? Everyone has money nowadays, and it's not about who gives you the most money, it's really who you can talk with about your business and who really helps you. Because as an entrepreneur, you're alone. I have the luck to have two brothers. Niklas has the luck to have Janice. But if you're alone, even if you're 2 or 3 people, and you must make serious decisions and important decisions with basically no information at all whether to go right or left. And if you then have a serious sparring partner who has seen many other businesses, in that kind of with that kind of important decisions, then it's great. That is exactly the guy you need, because there's no one else who can help you. Of course, you have friends, and of course today I could call Martin, Louis, and Niklas and ask, but they probably will say, no, I have my own stuff, leave me alone. But if he's invested in my business, he's interested in it, then he's good, he probably will help him.
Yeah. Can I ask you a question? I mean, how do you deal with the problem that most money are now chasing buyouts rather than early stage investments? I mean, the asset class is shifting away from early stage investments into buying goods and buying TVC and that sort of size of deal.
I'm very thankful of that. Very thankful.
So you're one of the shrinking.
Yeah. We have minute funds of 300 million euros to put to work, which really, in relative terms, especially in Europe, is very small. So what it means is that thankfully, and this has been sort of the idea of Index, but of a number of other firms, that the level of innovation that goes on in Europe is totally disconnected with the amount of venture capital that actually is injected to back entrepreneurs. So in relative terms to the U.S., for instance, where $25 billion is put to work in venture-backed companies every year, it's less than $4 billion in Europe.
When did you raise your fund? Could you raise it again? That's my question.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
3 weeks, right?
Yeah, no. The last one took 3 weeks, and actually it was in April or March. And actually the notion that we kept was, let's keep it small, let's stick to our knitting, and continue doing what we're doing. But it is going to be very interesting to see what happens, not only on the private equity side, but actually, probably the majority of you are tending to make a number of investments on your own and acting as angels/VCs. In the case of Marc, it's very, very obvious that he and his brothers are doing that. But
yeah, you're competing, right?
But one thing I wanted to say is that Google said yesterday publicly to all of us that close to half of the profits they make come from Europe. Which means that we make the Silicon Valley companies so wealthy and successful, we are responsible for half of their market cap. I think it's time we fund our own companies, and some of that market cap stays in Europe.
So, any other question in the audience? Please.
You mentioned when you were talking that when you start a business, one of the big issues is there's a lot of big competitors or big companies already in those spaces. When you look at online for the past 4 or 5, maybe 6 years, the successes have not come from established companies. They've all come from companies that have started up from next to nothing. Why do you think that's been the case, and do you think that's set to continue as well?
I can answer that. Yeah, I can answer that. So my theory is that you're much better off starting with a blank sheet of paper than a big balance sheet and revenues and customers and market share. Because what happened now is that there's so much the new technology and the internet are enabling you to do things, solve an old problem in completely different ways, and that usually means that it's much, much cheaper. It's very difficult to be an established company, established revenue streams, to disrupt yourself and go to choose the CEO for a public company, go to to your board, say, oh, by the way, we're going to completely disrupt ourselves, and we're going to have a big decrease for a few years, for a year or so in revenues. It's very, very difficult. So you have all these different constraints in an established company. And what happens today, the infrastructure, the internet infrastructure is so amazing because you can, not only can you use, like if you have a great idea, and Skype was a very good example of that, and YouTube was also a good example, you have many others. If you have something which is great and you just put it out on the internet, people just discover it, and you don't need to have this massive amount of marketing. In the old days, it was all about building up a sales and marketing infrastructure, advertising your services, getting into retail. You don't need to do these things anymore. And also with all this thing we talk about Web 2.0 is that a lot of building blocks are already there. So when you innovate, you can innovate on top of other technologies. So it's actually very lightweight to produce new services.
So if we could just have the slides that I prepared, because we're now on to the topic of Web 2.0. We're on to the topic of, as you saw,
introduce Web 3.0.
Web 3.0 starts here. Actually, no. I think that Louis started last year. If we could have the slides, that'd be great. We also saw that in that introductory video. What I wanted to focus on, hopefully, is sort of the fact that when you think about Web 2.0, and actually Valleywag helped us with this, which is basically the Wall Street Journal of the internet, what you realize is that with Web 2.0, the entrepreneurs and successful entrepreneurs are getting younger and younger. So, Niklas, you're very aging. If we go to the next slide.
I saw it yesterday.
That's right. No, of course. Well, you're 25. That's my understanding. If we go to the next slide, and this is actually Valleywag's, mostly Valleywag's information. Stelios, I believe you started EasyJet when you're 28. Jim Clark has had quite a bit of success as he's gotten older, although I think that he hit the jackpot at 50, and Shutterfly, I don't think he would call a success at this point, but he's too busy sailing in any case. But the point, and if you see it on the next slide, I've actually done a visual, really showing you what I can do, just like that guy yesterday, the Swede. I can do slides too. We can take that one away. Thank you very much for showing them. But I did want to bring up the point about how do you continue to be entrepreneurial? How do you deal with the fact that there's some young punk who's actually making money on poker in his dorm room and starting a business that is looking at what you guys have done as success and want to take over what you have successfully done, in fact. Stelios, you start.
It's a problem.
That's it.
The next innovation in travel is going to come from another 28-year-old.
Yeah.
Not me, probably. Public companies, the earlier question was, why don't great innovative ideas, disruptive ideas come from public companies? I have a bit of experience sitting on board of 2 public companies I created. And the whole system is designed to preserve money, not to go and risk it. And you're supposed to focus, and you're supposed to only do what you're supposed to be doing. Otherwise, shareholders get very upset. And it's only during bubble years that you're allowed to go out and diversify, and exceptionally companies are allowed to invest in an adjacent sector. And sometimes, we get catastrophic results as well. So at the end of the day, I think it is the next 28-year-old that's going to come up with the next idea, because we can't afford the time, and we have to preserve what we have. It's jungle, isn't it? So it is a survival.
I think that we're all too used to this new starting up businesses every 10 seconds. And if you think about some of our favorite brands in the world, like Coca-Cola, or what we were talking about yesterday in the advertising space, do not forget the power of your brand and the relationship with your customer. Sure, people are going to come up and try and copy you and do what you're doing, but if you focus on the end user and on what you're good at and what the relationship you have with your users, as long as you're converting them to come back yet time and again, and for them to tell their friends to come back, you can build a long-term brand. I don't think that we should be thinking in such short-term basis.
But brands get built overnight. I mean, Martin was saying this yesterday, that Google is the most popular brand, or the most valuable brand in the world. And I'd be curious to know how much Google has actually spent on marketing in its first 3-4 years to build that brand.
So we have such an amazing service.
That's right. Martin, any thoughts on the youth side?
I think it also depends on the rivals you pick and the fight that you pick and the environment in which you move in. But I have had experiences like building Ya.com, where the demographic was 16 to 25, and by then I was 39 when I started it. And I think it's an issue. Can you connect to your demographics more than... Why was Ya.com started by people in that demographic? So we did these ads where we had people pissing on TV and saying Ya.com, and everybody hated those ads, but our demographics, they loved those ads. They liked the idea of pissing on TV. And I think that, which was a subliminal message, go to the internet.
Yeah, the turtle one.
The turtle ones. Yeah, we had those turtles, having sex. And it was, so the question is, how do you reach your demographics? Not how old are you. Can you connect to the people who you are talking to? And I guess Redstone, I don't know if the guy is still running Viacom. Last I was checking. But I mean, you can have guys in the 80s reaching kids who are teens. So the question is, can you connect to your demographics?
Yeah. I think we have time for 1 or 2 last questions. Otherwise, you guys are probably all hungry. I would like to thank our fantastic panel. There's an hour break where you're supposed to catch lunch. And we start promptly after an hour, so I guess 2:15, with Jonathan Citrain's panel, which is all about digital youth culture.